My name is Cassandra Rhodes, and I am 30 years old. On paper, my life looks fine, respectable even. I live in Denver, in a one-bedroom apartment where the heating rattles when it's tired, and the view is half skyline, half parking lot. I'm a senior digital marketing strategist at a mid-sized agency, which is a fancy way of saying I stare at screens all day, convincing strangers to click on things. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Every piece of furniture in that apartment has a story. The couch I bought secondhand and cleaned until my fingers were pruny. The thrift store coffee table I sanded and stained myself. The framed print above my desk that says, "You are not behind." I bought that after a client screamed at me for missing a deadline that he'd moved without telling me. I built this life one exhausted late night at a time. No handouts, no backup plan, just me and my over-caffeinated nervous system. If you called my mother, though, and asked who the real main character of our family was, she wouldn't say my name. She'd say my brother's. Cameron. Growing up, Cameron was the golden child, and I was logistics, the reliable one. I was the kid who remembered school picture day and packed his permission slip in her own backpack so he wouldn't forget. The one who watched him while mom ran errands that somehow always ended at a casino or a friend's house with cheap wine. He was the sun. I was the satellite. Mom, Linda, never said it outright, but it was always there in the way she moved through the world. Cameron's mistakes were phases. Mine were disappointments. When he crashed Dad's car at 17, she cried about how hard Cameron was trying. When I dared to say I wanted to go out of state for college, she cried about how selfish I was to leave her. I went anyway. I worked part-time, took out loans, and learned how to stretch $50 across 2 weeks like it was a magic trick. Dad died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Quick, brutal, and unforgiving. After that, whatever thin balance we had completely collapsed. Mom's grief twisted into something sharp and needy, and any conversation that started as, "How are you?" ended with, "Can you help me out until next month?" By the time I landed my current job in Denver, I'd learned to keep our calls short and safe. Weather, work in vague terms, the occasional, "Yeah, I'm doing okay." Definitely not, "I just got promoted," or "I'm finally not panicking every time rent is due." Because in my family, information is never just information, it's leverage. That's important to understand before I tell you about the knock. It was a Wednesday evening, the kind of evening that smelled like burnt coffee and stale anxiety. I'd just finished a Zoom call where my boss said the word pivot so many times I started counting it in my head like a drinking game. I closed my laptop, stretched, and let my brain switch from client metrics to the very serious question of what leftovers I was going to microwave for dinner. That's when the doorbell rang. Not just a polite ding either, a relentless, impatient buzzing. Again and again. Okay, I muttered, padding to the door in socks. "I'm coming." I wasn't expecting anyone. My best friend Olivia, who lived 3 floors down, always texted first. Packages got left at the door. My brain flickered briefly through possibilities. Salesperson, wrong apartment, serial killer. Weirdly, the serial killer felt least stressful. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped straight through the floor. "Surprise," my mother sang, arms spread wide like she was standing under a shower of confetti. Behind her, dragging a duffel bag that looked suspiciously full, was Cameron. He grinned. "Hey, Cass." For a heartbeat, the hallway went quiet in my head. Just a high, ringing sound and the feeling that my life had just tilted a few degrees off its axis. "What are you doing here?" I finally managed. "You're supposed to be in Tucson." Mom breezed past the question with a dismissive wave. "Can't a mother visit her successful daughter?" she trilled, already pressing forward. "Are you going to invite us in?" she added, but it wasn't really a question. She was already stepping around me. I froze for a fraction of a second, then forced myself to move aside. Cameron followed, dropping his duffel bag directly onto my freshly vacuumed rug. "Nice setup, sis," he said, glancing around. "Got any Coors Light?" Of course. Not, "Hi, how are you?" Not, "You look good." Just comments about my apartment and my fridge. I shut the door carefully, buying myself a few extra seconds to breathe. My chest felt tight in that familiar way, like I was 9 years old again, bracing myself for whatever chaos was about to splash over me. "I wasn't expecting company," I said, turning to face them. "How long are you staying?" "Oh, just a few days," Mom answered, sitting on my couch like it already belonged to her. She smoothed a hand over the cushion, eyes sweeping the room with sharp interest. "Maybe a week, depending." "Depending on what?" I asked, crossing my arms. She smiled, a little too sweetly, on how things go. A cold little thought slid down my spine. Here we go. Cameron, she said, nodding at my brother. Show your sister the thing. He pulled out his phone with a smirk and tapped a few times before handing it to me. On the screen was a LinkedIn notification. My own profile, my new title, my promotion. How did you? We were so proud, Mom said, and the way she said proud made my skin itch. So, of course, I called your cousin Ashley, the one in HR, to ask what someone in your position typically makes. She laughed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Quite impressive, Cassandra. My face burned. You checked up on my salary? Oh, don't be dramatic, she said, waving a hand. Family shouldn't have secrets. Yeah, Cameron chimed in, already eyeing my fridge. Especially rich family members. I stared at them, the room suddenly too small. There it was, the leverage. Why are you really here? I asked quietly. Mom's expression shifted. The fake warmth slid away just enough to show the steel underneath. Well, since you asked. She leaned back against my couch like she was about to begin a presentation. We're in a bit of a situation back home. What kind of situation? I asked, even though I already knew the answer would somehow be my responsibility. Financial, she said bluntly. The house needs a new roof, and Cameron's truck broke down. Poor thing can't get to work without reliable transportation. I lost my job anyway, Cameron added, opening my fridge without permission. 3 months ago. My head snapped toward him. 3 months ago? And you didn't tell me? He shrugged, talking around a mouthful of my leftover Thai food. Boss was a jerk. Not my fault. I looked at Mom. You didn't think to mention this during our calls? I didn't want to worry you, she said, inspecting her nails. But now that we know you're doing so well. Her eyes swept my apartment again, slower this time. The framed art, the laptop on the table, the new coffee machine. There it was, the ask, coiling in the air between us. Are you asking me for money? I said. Not asking, Mom corrected. Family helps family, Cassandra. Your father would have expected it. The mention of Dad was a slap. She knew exactly what she was doing. Don't bring Dad into this, I said, my voice edging sharp. Listen, Cameron said, still chewing. You've got this fancy job and apartment. We're just asking you to help out your family. 10 grand would cover everything. 10, I almost choked. $10,000? 15 would be better, Mom added smoothly. Give us some breathing room. You can't be serious, I said. Perfectly serious, Mom replied, and her tone had hardened. After everything I sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me? By being selfish? Selfish. The word hit a bruise that had never fully healed. Every honor roll, every scholarship, every late shift I'd worked through college. Somehow I was always selfish for wanting a life that wasn't on fire. I worked for everything I have, I said. Nobody handed me anything. Oh, please, Cameron scoffed. You always thought you were better than us. That's not true, I started. It is, Mom cut in. Always had to be the perfect one, didn't you? Well, now's your chance to prove you care about family. The room felt like it was tilting. My pulse roared in my ears. I need some air, I said finally. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Fine, Mom said, settling back into the couch like a queen reclaiming her throne. But we'll need an answer before we leave, and we're staying here, of course. Of course, I echoed numbly. I grabbed my keys and phone and walked out before they could say anything else. The hallway felt like the only place I could breathe. By the time I knocked on Olivia's door, my hands were shaking. She opened it in leggings and an oversized t-shirt, hair piled on top of her head, eyes widening when she saw my face. Whoa, what happened? You look like you saw a ghost. Worse, I said hoarsely. I saw my mother. Over tea at her tiny kitchen table, I laid it all out. The surprise visit, the salary spy mission, the $15,000 demand, the expectation of support like I was some kind of walking ATM. They just showed up and demanded 15 grand? Olivia repeated, incredulous. Like they were ordering off a menu? Plus maybe ongoing support, I said weakly. Monthly. That's insane, she said. What are you going to do? I stared at the steam rising from my mug. I don't know. I can't just kick them out. Why not? She asked. It's your apartment. Because it's complicated. The words came out small. It's family. Olivia's expression softened, but her voice stayed firm. Remember what you told me about your childhood? How your mom always favored Cameron? How you paid your own way through college while they helped him with everything? Cassandra, this isn't about family. This is about them taking advantage of you. Again. I swallowed hard. Because the truth was, I knew she was right. This wasn't new behavior. It was just the biggest version of it. Olivia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Come stay with me tonight. Give yourself space to think. I nodded, relief flooding through me. Okay. But later, lying on her lumpy pull-out couch, listening to the traffic hum outside, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the look in my mother's eyes as she sat on my couch and calculated my net worth. Tomorrow, I told myself, something has to change. I just didn't realize that one small word, no, was about to crack my family open and show me what was really inside. The next morning, I stood outside my apartment door with my hand on the knob, feeling like I was about to walk into a meeting I hadn't prepared for. Sleep had been a joke. I'd closed my eyes and replayed every moment from the night before on a loop. My mother's voice, Cameron's smirk, the number 15,000 flashing like a neon sign in my head. The old version of me, the one who'd cried in bathroom stalls and quietly agreed to help out until next month, would have walked in there, apologized for being difficult, and found a way to give them at least half of what they wanted. But I'd spent too many years setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. I turned the handle and stepped inside. Mom and Cameron were already awake, of course. Why wouldn't they be? It wasn't their home. They had nothing to take care of. Good, you're back, Mom said brightly, like I'd just gone on a quick milk run. She was sitting at my small dining table, phone in hand, a half-eaten bagel on a plate I didn't remember offering. Cameron was at the counter, pouring himself coffee from my French press like he'd brewed it. There she is, he added. We were starting to worry. My stomach twisted. They looked too comfortable, like they'd already decided how today was going to go. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. Perfect timing, Mom replied, brushing crumbs from her blouse. We've been discussing how to handle the arrangement. My chest tightened. The arrangement? Yes, she said casually. We realized last night that it would be easier for everyone if we set this up as monthly transfers. The 15,000 would help immediately, but obviously we'll need some ongoing support until Cameron finds suitable employment and I can get the house in order. Maybe you can pay the roof and part of the truck up front, then. Monthly, I echoed, my voice flat. Well, yes, Mom said, as if we were discussing a subscription service. We're family. We help each other. It's just practical. So you want me to support both of you indefinitely? I asked. Don't be dramatic, Cameron said, rolling his eyes. Just until we get back on our feet. And when might that be? I asked. They exchanged a look, the kind of look that said they'd never actually considered an end date because they'd assumed I wouldn't dare ask for one. Hard to say exactly, Mom hedged. You know how unpredictable life can be. In my head, another voice spoke up, Sarah from accounting, who'd told me just last week about her brother. Once they see you as an ATM, she'd warned, they'll never stop withdrawing. I hadn't realized I'd already become that person in my mother's story, the successful one, the stable one, the one they could use as a backup plan. Something inside me went very still. No, I said. Mom blinked. Excuse me? No, I repeated, clearer this time. I'm not going to give you 15,000, and I'm not going to set up monthly transfers. For a second, there was silence. The world narrowed to the ticking of the cheap clock on my wall and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then Mom laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. You're not serious. I am, I said. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. I worked for what I have. I have my own bills, my own responsibilities. I'm not your retirement plan. I'm not Cameron's safety net. Cameron slammed his mug down a little too hard. Coffee sloshed over the side. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? He snapped. Little Miss Perfect with her fancy job and fancy apartment. This isn't about being better, I said. This is about boundaries. Boundaries? Mom repeated, the words sour in her mouth. Family doesn't have boundaries, Cassandra. Healthy families do, I shot back. Healthy families don't show up unannounced, dig into each other's salaries, and demand lump sums of money like it's owed. Her eyes hardened. After everything I sacrificed for you. You fed me and clothed me, I said. That's what parents are supposed to do. That's not a debt I owe you for the rest of my life. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Ungrateful, she hissed. I raised you alone after your father died. I gave you everything. You gave Cameron everything, I said quietly. You gave me responsibility. Cameron stepped between us, taller, broader, his shoulders squared. You're going to regret talking to Mom like that. I felt a flash of fear, an old, instinctive reaction. Cameron had never hit me, but menacing? He'd practiced that since we were kids. I reached for my phone. If you don't leave, I said evenly, I'm calling building security. Mom's face went pale, then red. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said. We stared at each other, the air between us heavy with every unspoken argument of the past 20 years. Finally, she grabbed her purse so hard the strap squeaked. Come on, Cameron, we're clearly not wanted here. But Mom! Now, she snapped. Cameron glared at me like I'd personally set fire to the house he didn't live in. He snatched up his duffel bag, muttering under his breath. At the door, Mom turned back one last time. This isn't over, Cassandra, she said, her voice low and cold. Family is forever. You can't just cut us off. I swallowed. I'm not cutting you off. I'm just not financing you. Same thing, she said. You'll see. The door slammed behind them. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening to the echo. I should have felt victorious, empowered, like a woman who'd finally stood up for herself. Instead, my legs gave out, and I sank onto the couch, shaking. My brain started doing what it always does, rewinding, second-guessing, guilt-tripping me on my own behalf. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I could have given them something. Maybe 15 was too much. But what about 5? What kind of daughter refuses to help when her family is struggling? By the time the thoughts had tied themselves into a knot, I'd already opened my contacts and scrolled to a familiar name. Hello, came the gentle, professional voice a few rings later. Hi, Dr. Rivera, I said, and my voice cracked on the third word. I think I need an emergency session.
This is.
An hour later, I sat in Dr. Rivera's softly lit office, fingers wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea I hadn't touched. She listened without interrupting as I poured it all out. The surprise visit, the salary check, the demand, the accusation of selfishness, the threat, the guilt clawing at me. When I finally trailed off, she nodded slowly. What you're feeling is normal, she said. You've been conditioned for years to believe that your worth is tied to how much you can sacrifice for your family. Saying no feels like betrayal because they trained you to feel that way. But they're my family, I said, the words sounding smaller out loud. Isn't it my responsibility to help? Let me ask you this, she said. Have they supported your dreams, your independence, or have they mostly taken, while framing it as your duty? I thought about the years of paying my own way through school while Cameron got help for rent and car repairs, the way Mom turned every one of my achievements into a comparison or an opportunity. They've taken, I said quietly. Dr. Rivera leaned forward. Cassandra, supporting family is a two-way street. What they are asking for isn't support, it's entitlement. And what you did this morning, saying no, that wasn't cruelty. That was an act of self-protection. I let her words sink in, but the guilt clung stubbornly. On my way home, I checked my phone. 6 missed texts, all from an unknown number. My stomach sank as I opened the first one. This is Aunt Caroline. Your mother is devastated. How could you treat family this way? She sacrificed everything for you. The next one arrived as I was stepping into the elevator. Your mother says you refuse to help with basic necessities. Is that true? Another. I can't believe you'd abandon your own mother like this. Money has gone to your head. By the time I reached my door, more had come in. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. A family friend from church. Each message was some variation of the same accusation. Selfish, heartless, ungrateful. I stared at the screen, blood roaring in my ears. Mom had moved fast. I didn't reply. I put my phone on the counter like it was something that might bite me and went to take a shower. Hot enough to burn the edge off my rage. It didn't work. When I came back, hair damp, skin flushed, my phone was still lighting up. But this time it wasn't texts. It was notifications. I frowned and unlocked the screen. A friend request from someone I vaguely recognized as Mom's neighbor. A tag in a post I hadn't seen yet. A fundraiser invite. My chest tightened. I tapped the fundraiser notification. A page loaded slowly, my Wi-Fi suddenly feeling like it was crawling on purpose. Title, Abandoned by My Successful Daughter. My throat closed. Mom's profile picture sat at the top of the page, eyes swollen just enough to look tragic. The story underneath was written in the first person, her voice, her narrative. She talked about being a widowed mother struggling to keep a roof over her head and help her troubled son get back on his feet. She talked about her high-earning daughter who refused to help with even basic necessities, who hung up when begged for mercy, who turned her back on blood in favor of money. She did not mention showing up unannounced. She did not mention demanding $15,000 and ongoing support. She did not mention Cameron going 3 months without telling me he'd lost his job. She did not mention my father's life insurance and where it went after he died. I scrolled, heart pounding. There were already comments. So sorry you're going through this, Linda. Some children forget where they came from. How could she do that to you? I'll share this. Praying God softens her heart. The total amount raised so far sat at the top, a growing number that made me feel physically ill. I sank into a chair, staring at the screen. It felt like the floor had shifted under me again. Suddenly, it wasn't just about money. It was about my character. My entire family, and now strangers, being fed a story where I was the villain. My first instinct was to comment, to tell the truth, to lay out every detail in a single scorching paragraph. Instead, I heard Olivia's voice in my head. Don't react while you're bleeding. I grabbed my phone and hit call. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, check your Facebook, I said, my voice shaking. Search for my mom's name. A pause, a few taps, then a sharp inhale. Oh my God, she whispered. She did not. She did, I said. This is character assassination, Cass. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said, because I didn't. Fight back? Ignore it? Crawl into a hole? Olivia was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. Don't respond. Not yet. Screenshot everything. Save it. If you're going to tell your side, do it strategically, not in a comment war under a fundraiser written to make you look like a monster. The word strategically snapped something into focus. Strategic was something I understood. I spent my days making campaigns for other people. Maybe it was time I ran one of my own. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and created a new document. Title, Evidence, Mom. The cursor blinked at me, waiting. I started dragging screenshots into the document. Texts, the fundraiser page, the comments. Then I opened my notes app and began writing everything I could remember about the last 24 hours and the last 20 years. The surprise visit, the salary check, the dollar amounts, the words she'd used, selfish, ungrateful, family doesn't have boundaries. I typed until my fingers ached, until my eyes burned. By the time I finally leaned back, my apartment was dark except for the glow of my screen. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just managing my mother's chaos. I was gathering proof. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with it yet. I just knew this. If she wanted a war, I wasn't going to fight it unarmed anymore. For the next 2 days, my apartment felt less like a home and more like a command center. My laptop stayed open on the dining table, surrounded by sticky notes, half-drunk mugs of coffee, and my growing file of receipts, digital and otherwise. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected another attack, another relative, another accusation, but I didn't react, not yet. I spent those hours documenting the timeline with clinical precision, like a forensic analyst cataloging evidence for a case I never wanted to prosecute. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. My narrative. By Sunday morning, my evidence file was 37 pages long. That's when I made the decision. Not everyone needed to know the truth, but the right people did. People who had seen shades of Mom's behavior over the years. People whose voices carried weight in the family. People who didn't automatically treat me as the antagonist in a story she had rewritten. 3 names made the shortlist. Natalie, my cousin, the only one who had ever quietly taken my side during holidays. Uncle Richard, my father's older brother, who had watched Mom coddle Cameron for years. Grandma Helen, Mom's own mother, sharp as vinegar and twice as potent. I took a breath, opened my messages, and sent each of them the same text. I need to talk to you about something important. Can we speak privately? The first reply came from Natalie, almost instantly. Absolutely. What's going on? I called her, pacing my living room as the phone rang. When she picked up, her voice was warm but cautious. Cass, you okay? No, I said honestly, I'm really not. I told her everything. Not with the tempered diplomacy I usually used when talking about family issues. This time, I told her the truth unfiltered. Every detail, every manipulation, every lie Mom had posted online. By the end, Natalie let out a long exhale. Oh, Cass, she murmured. I'm so sorry. Honestly, I'm not surprised. You're not? She hesitated. Aunt Linda did something similar to me last year. After I got promoted at the bank, she called saying she needed money for a medical emergency that turned out to be a spa weekend. When I didn't give it to her, she told my mom I'd become greedy. My jaw dropped. She did? Oh, yeah. She's tried it with others, too. You're just the latest target. There was a pause, and then, good for you for standing up to her. I wish I had. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Not healed, but understood. Next was Uncle Richard. He didn't answer my call at first, but he called back 15 minutes later. Cassandra? His deep voice sounded like warm gravel. Everything all right? I told him the same story, but unlike Natalie, he didn't gasp or apologize. He went quiet, very quiet. When I finished, he sighed heavily. Your mother always had an entitled streak, he said. Your father and I talked about it more than once. He tried to shield you from the worst of it. My throat tightened. He did. I just didn't realize how much until he was gone. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, he said, but I'm proud of you. I blinked. Proud? For not letting her manipulate you into poverty under the guise of family obligations. You're allowed to have boundaries, Cassandra. Your father would have agreed. That cracked something inside me. Some long bruised part that had been waiting for a grown-up to tell me I wasn't wrong. We talked a while longer, and when we said goodbye, I felt steadier. Last was Grandma Helen. She was old school, sharp-tongued, a woman who could slice a man in half with a single raised eyebrow, and Mom feared her more than anyone. I called, and she answered on the second ring. Cassandra, she said, your voice sounds like it's carrying a boulder. What happened? I told her every single thing. By the time I finished, her inhale was slow and ominous. Your mother, she said, has been taking advantage of people her entire life. It stops now. I almost dropped my phone. What do you mean? I mean, she said sharply, I'm calling a family meeting, tonight, without Linda present, and I'm going to tell them the truth. I froze. Grandma, you don't have to... Oh, I absolutely do, her voice hardened. I'm tired of cleaning up her messes. She weaponizes pity like other people use cutlery. My mouth fell open. Oh, and that fundraiser of hers, Grandma added. It'll be taken down within the hour. And it was. An hour and 3 minutes later, the fundraiser disappeared. Comments vanished. Shared posts went quiet. Mom's smear campaign imploded in real time. For the next 2 months, Mom didn't contact me. Neither did Cameron. The silence was unnerving at first, like holding your breath underwater, waiting for the surface. But slowly, that silence turned into something else. A boundary, a bubble, a life. And then, on a rainy Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. This time I checked the peephole. Mom stood alone in this hallway, soaked to the skin, hair plastered to her face. She looked smaller somehow, as if someone had drained the venom but left the vessel. I cracked the door, but didn't step aside. Cassandra, she said, voice softer than I'd heard in years. May I come in? Every instinct screamed no. Every conditioned reflex whispered yes. Against my better judgment, I stepped back. She sat on the couch, clutching a damp tissue. Her eyes darted around, taking stock, assessing, calculating. Some habits never die. Cameron got arrested, she said abruptly. My stomach dropped. What? Drunk driving, she whispered, his third offense. I sank into the armchair. Is he okay? Physically, yes, she sniffed, but he's facing serious charges. They said he could get 18 months. I waited for it, the ask, the plea, the manipulation. But she surprised me. I'm not here for money, she said. And for a second, a small fleeting second, I believed her. Then she continued. I didn't know who else to talk to. Your grandmother isn't speaking to me. Most of the family has taken her side, and Cameron... She broke off, wiping her eyes. Cassandra, she murmured, I realize I've done a lot wrong. I sat up straighter. In enabling Cameron, in punishing you, in expecting you to be responsible for everything. I see it now, and I'm sorry. A genuine apology from my mother was about as common as a solar eclipse. I felt my throat tighten. But then I saw her eyes flicker to my wrist, to my new smartwatch, a birthday gift I'd bought myself. Her gaze lingered, and just like that, the light in my chest dimmed. Why are you really here, Mom? I asked softly. She hesitated. Then, the public defender says Cameron needs a better lawyer. And there it was. It's not like before, she added quickly. I'm not asking you to pay. I don't know anything about this stuff. You've always been good with decisions. I thought maybe you could advise me. I stared at her, at the woman who raised me, at the woman who broke me in ways I was still trying to name, at the woman who now looked at me with a mix of desperation, guilt, and old habits. I did see something new in her eyes, but I also saw the ghosts of who she had always been. I'll help you find a good lawyer, I said at last. I have a friend who specializes in DUI cases, but I won't be paying for it. Relief flooded her face. Thank you, Cassandra. Truly, that's more than I deserve. I nodded. It is. And then before she could speak again, I added, but listen carefully. If you ever manipulate me again, if you ever lie about me online, guilt trip me, or try to turn the family against me, we're done. Permanently. She swallowed hard. I understand. But I wasn't sure she did. Not yet. When she left, the apartment felt strangely quiet, like the end of a storm that had lasted years. My phone buzzed as I was locking the door behind her. A message from Olivia. Do you think she's changed? I stared at the rain streaking down the hallway window. No, I typed back, not yet. A pause, then. But I think she's desperate enough to pretend. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step she'd ever taken in the right direction. In the weeks that followed, my life shifted into a strange, uneasy rhythm. Like the air after a storm, when the sky is still bruised, but the wind has softened. Mom kept her word, at least on the surface. She didn't ask for money. She didn't guilt me. She didn't weaponize pity. But her silence carried weight, a waiting, a hunger. I sent her the contact info for my lawyer friend Brandon, and then stepped completely out of the process. I told myself that was healthy detachment. Some nights I believed it. Cameron's court date came faster than expected. Mom texted updates, brief ones, mostly logistical, almost professional. He pled guilty. He'll serve time. I'm scared, Cassandra. I didn't know how to respond to that last one, so I didn't. 3 months later, Cameron was transferred to a rehabilitation-focused facility. Another text from Mom, this one longer, filled with guilt, regret, and something that startled me. I enabled him. I should have stopped him years ago. I should have listened to you. I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't reply. 4 months later, the unexpected happened. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Hello? Hey, Cass. I froze. Cameron's voice. Different. Less swagger, more gravel. Tired, but clear. Cameron? Yeah, he said. I got out early. Good behavior. I didn't know what to feel. Relief, fear, hope, all tangled together. How are you? I asked carefully. Sober, he said with a hollow laugh. 96 days. My breath caught. That's really good. Part of the program, he continued, is making amends. I know I've been a crap brother. I blamed you for stuff that was never your fault. I took advantage of you. I made fun of you to feel better about myself. His voice wavered. My heart did too. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Of all the apologies I'd imagined hearing in my lifetime, his was the one I never believed would come. And it felt real. No angle, no manipulation, no agenda. Just a man sitting with the mess he made and owning it. Thank you, I whispered. That means a lot. We talked a few minutes more. He didn't ask about money. He didn't ask to come over. He didn't hint at anything. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet, feeling something warm and terrifying. Hope. Mom, on the other hand, her growth was slower, uneven. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. She tried testing the edges of my boundaries. A small loan until payday. A dramatic story about bills piling up. Subtle sighs about how family supports each other. Each time I answered the same way. I can't give you money, but I can send you resources. She didn't like it, but she accepted it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't collapsing at her feet to fix her problems. And she was learning, slowly, painfully, to stand. Then came the call I had been bracing for, but dreading. Mom lost the house. Not because she took a loan for Cameron's lawyer. She never did. She simply let everything pile up until it buried her. She called me sobbing. I don't know where to go, Cassandra. I have nothing. I have no one. In the past, I would have driven overnight to rescue her. I would have drained my savings. I would have erased myself to save her from the consequences she created. This time I breathed and said, I'm sorry you're going through this. I can't fix it financially, but I can help you find affordable housing and job resources. There was a long silence. Then, that's all you have to say? I'm helping you in the healthiest way I can, I said. She hung up on me. 3 days later, she called back. I applied for the apartment, she said stiffly. And I have an interview at Target. She sounded humiliated, but also alive. It's a start, Mom, I said gently. She didn't reply, but she didn't hang up either. The next turning point came unexpectedly. A call from Uncle Richard. I thought you should know, he said without preamble. Your mother asked me for money today. My heart dropped. What did she say? That she's barely surviving on retail wages, that her daughter abandoned her, that she has nowhere to turn. And what did you do? I told her no. I closed my eyes, relief flooding through me. You did? And I told her why. I told her what you've done, how you helped without enabling, how you set boundaries we should have set decades ago. He exhaled slowly. I should have had your back sooner, Cassandra. After your father died, I watched Linda drain his insurance. I watched her spoil Cameron. I watched her lean on you unfairly, and I said nothing because I didn't want conflict. His voice cracked. But you broke the cycle I was too cowardly to confront. Something hot and sharp pressed behind my eyes. Validation, a rare, precious thing in my family. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me, he said. Thank yourself. You led the way. A week later, Natalie invited me to her daughter's birthday party. I almost said no. I didn't want gossip. I didn't want pity. I didn't want the quiet judgment of relatives who believed Mom's fundraiser before they saw the truth. But Natalie insisted. Most of them know now, she said, and the ones who don't, they don't matter. So I went, and she was right. Aunt Caroline, who'd sent that scathing text, hugged me with eyes full of remorse. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Linda told us you refused to help when she was starving. She left out a lot." "It's okay," I said quietly. "You didn't know." Others came too. Cousins, second cousins, a neighbor or two. They didn't treat me like a villain. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was walking into a courtroom where my mother had already testified against me. I felt supported, seen. When I finally left, Natalie walked me to my car. "You know," she said, "you didn't just stand up to your mom. You changed the whole family." I laughed softly. "I doubt that." She shook her head. "You did. You showed all of us what boundaries look like, what healthy looks like. We needed that, even if we didn't know it." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. But on the drive home, I kept thinking about her words. Change the whole family. I didn't feel like a hero. I barely felt brave. But maybe standing your ground doesn't feel heroic when you're the one doing it. Maybe it just feels necessary. And maybe that's enough. Life didn't change overnight. There was no cinematic sunrise, no soft music swelling as I finally moved on. What happened instead was quieter, slower, little moments that built into something sturdy, like healing, like peace. 2 months after Natalie's daughter's birthday party, I got promoted at work, Director of Digital Strategy. The team clapped. My boss gave a little speech about leadership and grit. Olivia showed up at my door with champagne and a box of overpriced macarons. "You earned this," she said, tapping her glass against mine. "Every last piece of it." I didn't tell my mother. Not because I was hiding it, but because this accomplishment was mine, not a token, not leverage, not a bargaining chip, just mine. For the first time in my life, success didn't feel like a burden I had to defend. Olivia and I started a tradition. Sunday brunch at a little cafe 2 blocks from my building. We ordered the same thing every time. Cinnamon waffles for her, an omelet for me, mimosas for both. Sometimes Natalie joined us, and the 3 of us would sit there laughing about work crises, dating disasters, or how many plants we'd killed that month. It felt like the kind of family I'd always wanted. One made by choice, not obligation. A family that didn't demand from me, just accepted me. When Cameron reached 1 year sober, Uncle Richard and I drove down to Tucson for the ceremony. I didn't know what to expect. Awkwardness, tension, maybe resentment. Instead, I saw a version of my brother I'd forgotten was possible. Clear eyes, steady hands, a quiet humility. Afterward, we went for coffee. "You know," he said, stirring his Americano, "I used to resent you." I blinked. "Wow. Start with the soft stuff, why don't you?" He laughed, but his eyes were sad. "I'm serious. Mom always compared us. Why can't you be more like Cassandra? Why can't you get good grades like Cassandra? Why can't you be responsible like Cassandra? It made me hate you before I even understood the word." "I never knew she did that," I murmured. "She did," he said, "all the time. And instead of trying to be better, I leaned into being worse. If I was already the problem child, why bother fighting the script?" He looked at me then, and there was no anger left in his eyes. "But that wasn't your fault. That was me being a coward, and I'm trying not to be anymore." A long silence settled between us. Comfortable, heavy in the right ways. "I'm moving to Phoenix," he said suddenly. "Fresh start, construction job, sober living house. Richard's helping me get set up." My heart thudded. "Cameron, that's incredible." "Yeah," he said, cracking a genuine smile. "One day at a time, right?" "Yeah," I echoed. "One day at a time." 2 months after Cameron moved to Phoenix, I got a call from Grandma Helen. "Your mother paid me back," she said. "For what?" "The money I loaned her for rent, every penny." I sat there stunned. "Seriously?" "Took her a year," Grandma said, "but she did it. And she's still in therapy, not consistently, but more than I expected." A tiny part of me, the part that used to crave her love, felt something like relief. Not reconciliation, not trust, just relief. A few weeks later, Mom called, not to ask for money, not to guilt-trip me, not to complain. Just, "How are you, Cassandra?" We talked for 20 minutes. She told me about her job at Target. She'd been promoted to team lead. She'd found a small apartment she could afford. She was learning to budget for the first time in her life. "It's hard," she admitted, "being responsible for myself. I always thought I was doing it before, but I wasn't. I was just surviving, borrowing, hoping someone would catch me. That takes a lot of awareness to recognize, I said carefully. Therapy helps, she murmured. Grandma insisted. She said if I wanted any chance of rebuilding relationships, I had to do the work. We didn't make plans to visit. We didn't promise weekly calls. We didn't pretend things were perfect. But it was a start, a small, fragile, honest start. And that was enough for me. As fall turned to winter, life settled into something that felt like my own. Work I cared about, friendships that sustained me, a family I chose rather than one I tolerated, and boundaries that kept me whole. One evening, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Denver skyline, lights glittering, the air sharp with cold, and I realized something. I was finally living a life that wasn't tangled in guilt. I wasn't waiting for the next crisis. I wasn't bracing for the next demand. I wasn't carrying the weight of people who expected me to carry everything. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt free. People always say family is forever, but the truth is, family is only forever if it's healthy, if it's mutual, if it's rooted in respect, not obligation or fear. Helping family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. Love doesn't mean limitless access. Boundaries are not betrayal, they are clarity. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop cushioning the consequences someone else earned. There were lonely nights. There were moments I doubted myself, moments I wondered if I was too cold, too harsh, too unforgiving. But then I remembered the feeling of being manipulated, of being seen as a resource instead of a person, of being a daughter only when they needed something. And I knew, beyond any doubt, I made the right choice. Not because everything turned out perfectly, but because I finally chose myself when no one else ever had. I refused to shrink. I refused to be used. I refused to set myself on fire to keep others warm. I learned that I am worthy of respect, even from my own family, especially from my own family. And that lesson, it's worth more than anything they could have asked of me,